United States budget deficit to hit $1.5 trillion for the year. The big headline number from the Congressional Budget Office report is a jolting shot of bad news. A budget deficit this fiscal year of close to $1.5 trillion, or 9.8% of gross domestic product. That's nearly as big as 2009's shortfall, which was the highest in nearly 65 years. The $1.5 trillion deficit would be a nominal record, but not quite as big as the 2009 deficit when measured as a percentage of the economy. And even more bad news. CBO's forecasters don't see employment returning to anything like normal before 2016. That is, if all goes well. Look inside the 190-page report, and you'll find facts, figures, and forecasts that could help Republicans make their case that deficits and debt must be cut now. But you'll also find other data that can aid President Barack Obama and Democrats in making their budgetary arguments, especially on the fiscal rationale for not repealing the health care law. The report carries political weight, even though congressional Republicans have heaped abuse on the CBO for reporting last year that the health care bill that Obama signed into law would reduce the deficit. CBO still remains the neutral, professional budget scorekeeper. It sets the terms of the debate. Arguments for cutting spending and debt. For Republicans, the CBO report supplies powerful arguments for cutting spending and reducing debt. The CBO's new estimate of the deficit for 2011 is $414 billion larger than the one the office produced last August. The new report uses the word unsustainable to describe deficits and debt in the years ahead. It warns that interest rates, which it says are very low by historical standards right now, will go up and will drive up the cost of paying off the debt. Interest payments on the debt are expected to skyrocket. CBO projects that the government's yearly net interest spending will more than triple between 2011 and 2021. Again, that is, if all goes well. As if that weren't frightening enough, the CBO warns in unusually stark language, as it has before, of the potential for a sovereign debt crisis. The report uses the words Greece and Ireland only once, but it spells out a very scary scenario in detail. Risk of a sudden fiscal crisis. The growing debt, it says, would increase the probability of a sudden fiscal crisis, during which investors would lose confidence in the government's ability to manage its budget, and the government would thereby lose its ability to borrow at affordable rates. It warns that as other countries' experiences show, investors can lose confidence abruptly, and interest rates on the government debt can rise sharply and unexpectedly. The exact point at which such a crisis might occur for the United States is unknown, in part because the ratio of federal debt to GDP is climbing into unfamiliar territory. There is no way to predict with any confidence whether and when such a crisis might occur, and no identifiable tipping point of debt relative to GDP. In other words, uncharted territory. The risk is increasing, and with that kind of risk being discussed by somber, nonpartisan numbers crunchers, the Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell's response to Obama's State of the Union speech sounds more compelling. Obama's call for a freeze on some types of federal spending falls way short, McConnell said. To freeze spending at this astronomically high level that we've achieved over the last 2 years really is totally inadequate, McConnell said. My taxes must go up. But then there's data in the report that gives the Democrats ammunition for arguing with the tax increases that Obama called for on Tuesday night. on upper-income Americans must be part of any deficit solution. To keep annual deficits and total federal debt from becoming unsustainable, lawmakers will need to increase revenues as a percentage of GDP significantly above historical levels, sharply decrease projected spending, or pursue some combination of the two approaches, the Budget Office said. It's not the CBO's job to recommend what combination of spending cuts and tax increases would do the job, but it does imply that tax increases are inevitable. Due to so many Americans not working, tax revenues have fallen. The government is forced to borrow, partly because tax revenues are so low by historical standards. In 2011, for the third consecutive year, revenues would be just under 15% of GDP. Levels that low have not been seen since 1950, the report says. Over the past 40 years, total revenues have averaged about 18% of GDP, and the CBO reminds Congress that the health care law does have tax increases and new revenues in it. For example, $91 billion will be collected through 2021 from a new fee on health insurers set to begin in 2014, and CBO does not back away from its estimate that the health care law, largely due to its cuts in future Medicare spending, will reduce future deficits. But there's a warning to both parties from the CBO director in his blog post on the report. Deficits should shrink to approximately 3.6% of GDP starting next year and for the next several years, he said. But that will occur only if Congress does three things which both Republicans and Democrats are very reluctant to do. Let the alternative minimum tax to bite more and more middle-class people. Congress has repeatedly passed one-year AMT patches to keep the tax from affecting the middle class. It has a big impact, especially on taxpayers in relatively high-income states with high state taxes, such as Maryland and New York. Raise taxes on upper-income people by reverting to the pre-2001 income tax rates. Obama and Congress agreed to a 2-year postponement of this tax increase, but Obama renewed his call for the tax hike on Tuesday night. Curb the annual increase in Medicare's payment rates for physicians to bring them into line with the inflation rate in the wider economy. Again, Congress has repeatedly passed temporary doc fix bills to shield doctors from those cost curbs. If Congress can't find the will to do those three things, the CBO director said, deficits from 2012 through 2021 would average approximately 6% of GDP, and debt would rise to a level not seen since right after the Japanese signed the Instrument of Surrender on the battleship Missouri. So, in other words, it's time to stop kicking the can down the road and actually do something about the soaring national debt. It's decision time. And again, these are more signs of the times, the end times, transition days, because it's about what kind of world are we leaving to the future generations, and that is a very important question. Daniel chapter 12, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which stands for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. 2. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. 3. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. Revelation chapter 6, verse 6. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. 7. When he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, Come and see. 8. And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with weapon, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. 9. And when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God, for the testimony which they held. 10. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? 11. And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them, they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also, and their brethren that should be killed as they were, should be fulfilled. 12. And I beheld when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. 13. And the stars of heaven fell into the earth, even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. 14. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island and nation were moved out of their places. 15. And the kings and leaders of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every workman, and every freeman, hid themselves in the dens and the rocks of the mountains. 16. And said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. 17. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Yes, it's time, again, for all prophecy to be fulfilled. Everything that must change, quickly or rapidly, and for the better, because everything is numbered, and everything is connected, and all these are more signs.